Lego. It's time to buckle up for a new episode of Raise Nation Radio, the one and only podcast made to inspire fundraisers like you to continue making impact in our communities, building better tomorrows, and exchanging ideas. So whether you're a trailblazer or seasoned pro, you'll pick up the trends that transform your fundraising. And together, we'll dive into lively conversations and chat with industry-leading fundraisers and thought leaders to explore hot-button issues and innovative ideas. So stay with us for the next 30 minutes while we inspire you to embrace the future of fundraising. Well, welcome back, Raise Nation. So glad to connect with you again. Thank you so much for making our show so popular. We're 114, 115 episodes strong now, and we are growing every day. We'd love to feature your voice too. So reach out to me, hello@onecause.com. We'll get you on the show and we'll chat it up. If you're new, that's exactly what we do here. We just explore social causes and societal change and tough issues and everything in between. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you do, follow us. We're everywhere. We stream on 10 different podcast channels. We're on demand at onecause.com. We're live at the Raise conference. So be sure to tune into all of our episodes. So it's moving into like my favorite time of year, the holidays, the end of year holidays. For me, I celebrate Christmas, but we're on the brink of Thanksgiving and New Year's. I just love this time of year. And Thanksgiving is such a, moment to remind us to be grateful for our loved ones and our family and our cherished moments. I think we all share that same joy, but for some, it's not the same. And I'm so glad to welcome my guest to help break this down and talk about it. Some of you may or may not know that November is National Adoption Month. And just saying those 3 words trigger all sorts of things in my mind that are not good. It's the opposite of family and cherished moments and all of the things that I was just talking about. So please welcome Oriana Carey. She's the CEO from the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Family. And we are going to talk about the mission, National Adoption Month, and all the things in between that we need to know. So Oriana, I hope that I kind of got all of those vowels and syllables right, but welcome to Raise Nation Radio, and correct me if I didn't.
Oh, that's fine. Well, thank you, Dawn, for having me, spotlighting our organization today and giving us an opportunity to talk about our organization and adoption and the support we provide.
Yeah, I really want to hear more, but I know our audience wants to get to know you first and then a little bit more about the organization. So could you introduce yourself beyond my simple name and title and just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do every day at the Coalition, how you got here, and then tell us about the mission.
Yeah. So again, my name is Oriana. I came to our organization in 2005 to help lead a new project, which was called the Foster Care and Adoption Resource Center at the time. I am a person by professional background that all my professional training, experience, that stuff was in social work. However, early in my career, I always kind of make jokes about it. I was more of a bossy person.
Don't seem like a bossy person.
And so leadership and leading up projects and helping inspire others was more of my path than in therapy or direct service or all of those things. Not to say that I didn't do those things, but I was leading people, projects, and organizational strategy pretty early on in my career. And as I said, I came to this organization in 2005 when our founder and my former boss, our CEO, Colleen Ellingson, got connected with me and said, hey, we have this new project. And people said, we should talk and sit down and talk. And, at the time, and I tie this into adoption, foster care work, that sort of thing, by saying, I was not necessarily, I don't know if you can call it expert, or it wasn't my necessarily, level of expertise. And I shared that outright. And, they wanted some of the other skills sets I had. But I think that's really important as we talk about this topic today, because even for those of us who are directly in our field, that is of human serving, mental health, what have you, much of the work around adoption or other, how family separation or other things occur are not necessarily taught to us. We're taught more about overall family systems. We're taught about when things don't go well, addiction, mental health, what have you. But what I've had the opportunity to learn over these 18 years is a lot around the nuances of what happens when family is formed differently than what are kind of our traditional thoughts and views, and all the various complex nuances around that. So that's a little bit about me, and you had asked, did you want me to go into our organization?
Yeah, I would love to learn more.
So
tell us about
our
the
organization is, we just celebrated 40 years, actually at our gala that we just recently had a couple weeks ago. In 1983, a group of local families who had been foster parents, some of them adoptive parents, noticed that there was this really unusual thing at the time. The thought was that foster parents should not adopt the kids that had been in their home. And there were a lot of other things going on. And that was not just here in Wisconsin, that was nationally. And so what would happen is a lot of children, older youth, would stay in foster care till age 18 and then not really have family connection. And so they fought pretty hard to say, people are talking about all different forms of adoption. What was happening then is you had a lot of people interested in beginning to be interested in international adoption. And they're like, we have a lot of children here locally who've gone through a lot of difficult times that deserve the same consideration. And so they advocated with our state legislature and got some money to sort of raise the awareness of this topic. At the same time, I would say across the United States, the same movement was gaining momentum. I am part of a national organization called the National Adoption Association, where many of us who had across the country who had started this first sort of movement of let's raise awareness about youth lingering in foster care without an adoptive resource. So that was the roots of this agency. A group of families got a little bit of legislative money, and one of their neighborhood friends, my former boss, our founder, happened to be a social worker who had worked in adoption at one point in her career. And she started in her basement with $25,000 in 1983 as one person, all by
one person, $25,000 in a basement.
Yep, all by herself.
Wow.
Today, the coalition, we're still a relatively small organization. we are responsible for providing information, support, referral, and resources to all 72 counties across Wisconsin. Adoption is still a lot of our work, but we also provide support for foster families, for relatives caring for kids who've come into their home, helping birth moms and dads who may have, had some challenges and needed support when children were reunified in their home, trying to work with our youth and raise awareness of their voice in this process. So we have grown tremendously in terms of our scope from that little kind of, it really was then about let's raise the awareness of these kids. I mean, they didn't even have a magazine. You didn't have the internet. You had these little, sort of spreadsheets that would have a name like Jane Smith, Catholic, brown hair, green. They were like, this is horrible. We have to bring awareness of who this human being is and what's special about them and a lot of that. And so that's sort of our beginnings that kind of pushed us off. And I would say our founder, my previous boss, a very passionate, purposeful, perseverant woman, had a lot, she didn't have a fundraiser or a finance person or, a team of people. She did a lot of work on her own.
Wow. Can we shout out the name of the founder?
Yes. Her name is Colleen Ellingson. She is now, I think, living happily near her adult children and grandchildren in Estes Park, Colorado, and enjoying retirement after all her years of hard work.
For her. And let's applaud what she did with $25,000 in a basement many years ago without the digital landscape that it is today that is competitive and sometimes hard to navigate, but certainly catapults a lot of messaging. And what I'm hearing is definitely an underscore, your impact has grown to a couple of different areas, but it all has the same, I think, common denominator about human connection. That's what this is really all about, human connection. And it's so important. I hadn't thought about that. So if I understood you correctly, you might have a young person in the foster care system, and before the work of this coalition and probably many others, that young person grew into a family and to a culture, but at 18, that meant that connection was gone because that family could not adopt them in the old legislation. Is that what I heard? Yep.
Those were, just thoughts that we had, we had thoughts and I think, again, we're always navigating these different nuances as we learn and, human relationships, human, connections, it's all very complex stuff. And so sometimes we can think we're doing the best thing and we're not.
It just looks good on paper. It's just,
it was really the idea of, and it's still the idea of foster care is intended to be temporary. It's intended to, help children return back home. And I think there was a view then if people got too attached, that would create a problem. I would say what we continue to forge forward as an organization, what I truly try to forge forward with everyone is that, we all need many people. Love is not a finite thing. It is infinite. And, we can all use as many people in our corner as possible. And, that might be messy sometimes, but, trying to come up with rules that kind of stop that isn't in the best interest of anyone.
For sure. I mean, I think family and what defines a family is infinite, as well as love, as well as connection and human connection. I mean, wherever you get your strength and matters of the heart should be promoted, not paused. So I'm starting to have a clearer picture here. And I love the theme for this year's National Adoption Month. So we're in November. It is National Adoption Month. We're going to bring awareness, although it's a 365 really awareness campaign. It doesn't stop at 1 month, but it's always nice to have that like little extra push, extra energy to be a little bit hyper focused. So this year, if I have this right, it's empowering youth and finding those points of connection. So what stands out to you about the theme for this year, this month?
Well, as I said, we continue to learn and need to, kind of redefine what support and empowerment looks like. And I think what we are beginning to see now as we moved from, what was in the 80s to late 90s, early 2000s, where we had a good amount of adoption happening, we're starting to hear now from the young adults and the youth who were, in families who experienced adoption, who are saying, wait a minute, again, I am a unique individual. And I have something to say about decisions that were made for me. There's a lot of decisions made on behalf of kids without them having a lot of
a voice. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I think also, what has always been a complexity in adoption is this sort of maintaining connections with a child's family of origin, matched with adoptive parents and adoptive fears, right? So, and what so often happened is, adoptive families either wanting to feel protective of some difficult histories, wanting to help youth heal, or pushing it too far one way or the other without really allowing someone to speak to that or make their own path, has created a lot of challenges for these young people late in life. So we've had adoptees who were part of our staff. We have obviously had a lot of panels and trainings over the years. And what we find is that for the adoptee, it's, I don't want to upset anybody. I really love these folks who have cared for me. And I have this curiosity about my family and they're still really important to me. And I don't know what to do with that. And I don't necessarily say anything to my adoptive family because it seems like they get, in some situations, we have adoptive families who can get really upset or are threatened by that. And it goes back to what I was saying. Love is infinite, not finite. Now, I say that to, so that's where we are. I think the other piece is we have a disproportionate number of youth who are children of color raised by white families and have been for many years. And this continued piece where, and so that's where we're talking about empowering youth voice as well, is that my experience in your neighborhood, in your community, in the school you sent me to may not be the same experiences you saw. And again, I may not have talked about it. I may not have known what words to talk about.
Hard to navigate. I mean, especially for a young mind, right? Very, very hard to navigate.
Yes. Yeah. I think one of the things that we've had to have, candid conversations with adoptive families, Caucasian adoptive families about is your privilege does not extend for this child, especially when they're not in your presence. When they're not in your presence, they're very much alone, and they are very much a person of color in our country today. And I think those are difficult conversations. I also think it's, there are many families working diligently to do the right thing. And, what do you do? I mean, we've had the opposite happen where, families have wanted to speak up on behalf of their children. And at times, the youth being like, don't come to my school, embarrass me. Don't, I really don't even want people to know all of this. So, very, very complex. So I think that's where, the theme is about, empowering that voice and allowing me to maintain connections the way I feel comfortable maintaining connections, being safe for me, being there for me.
Because nobody can dictate your connections. They have to be nurtured and blossomed, and I love the fact that it's not or moving away from a cookie cutter approach. Not one size fits all. You said a few minutes ago about unique individuals. Unique individuals have their own path, towards connections. And that really needs to be nurtured. And I love the statement, nothing about us without us, which is what, your organization provided to me. And it screams off the page as I'm reading it, because I think it sounds to me like nobody really had bad intentions. They just thought what they thought and needed a little bit more, needed to take a step back maybe and really listen. And what does this mean? And how can we evolve and just make this better for people to connect? And it is a lot going on, especially for a young mind. Could you imagine? I'm adopted. I'm different. I don't have the natural culture that this family has. I want to fit in. They're good to me. I love them. They love me. I don't want to hurt them, but I have curiosity. School's not everything they think. That is a lot. I mean, kids have enough pressure as it is, let alone all of that. I wouldn't even know where to begin to navigate. So starting with them and listening is probably a good first step, I would think.
Yeah. And I mean, we could go on about the complexities.
So complex.
The fact that we still have some school assignments in, 2023, when we have such diverse families without introducing adoption out there, and we'll still have, just lots of interesting pieces of, bringing baby pictures when you're talking about elementary school aged kids, or other things in high school about genetics and just, I think well-intentioned people that need to consider that we have lots of different family, even as, in families where everybody is with their related family of origin, sometimes there's cutoff. Sometimes there's people, and so I think it's just a continual work of education. And often our youth are left, navigating that very much alone. I think the other thing is, again, like you had said, and I had said about the individual story, I heard one adoptive dad say it once, and I love the way it was said. If you know one adoption story, you know one adoption story. Mm-hmm. And, because we have many people on our team that are, foster adoptive parents or have lived experience one way or another, they will tell you, I have 3 sons, and each one of them has a different view of how they want to connect with their parents. We leave the door open. We leave that connection open. One person, no, another 100% yes, and another, I don't know. And, and so there isn't a right way. And I think that's, back to this theme is, empowering somebody's voice. Is that what you want to do? How do you feel about that? How can I support you in that decision? is important. And I think we talked earlier about it being a digital age. In a digital age, you can't hide anything anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody wants to find out information, they're going to find out information, and it can be, finding out information without a support system is not good.
Yeah. Okay, lots to navigate and unpack there. You mentioned something like so simple that now to me is so profound. I think most like high school students will go through that fun senior period where they're, there's yearbooks and they're asked to bring in, their baby picture. And then there's that whole contest thing about, guess who this is? And wow, how isolating is that for somebody who grew up in foster care or adoption, and they don't have that connection and that root, and they need that. That's a terrible reminder, right? Like, and I'm not saying that we don't do those fun things, but maybe we need to be a little bit more sensitive. Something just as simple as that, be a little bit more sensitive and how we do it, and how we can be more inclusive. We're better than that, right? We can come up with something that would be just tender and sweet for everybody. Just something simple like that. It just hit me as you were talking. So
yeah, and some youth don't have those things. They don't have those pictures, or it is a very complex thing because you don't want to take, like you said, you don't want to take the fun out of things. It's just how do we continually navigate. And so at the coalition for us is, we have to go where we can have influence, and where we typically can have the most influence is with the families that reach out to us and, provide information, provide alternatives, provide, tips and tools on how exactly you can be supportive.
Yeah. So how exactly do you support adoption at the coalition?
Well, in various ways, like in those beginning pieces, as I discussed, it's building awareness of the need, especially working on raising the profile of kids who really have been lingering for a while within our systems of care, and working with the social workers out there in the field to help find family or find other connections for these young people. Talk to people about myths, help people navigate, because there are so many, you can go through a private agency and try to work through infant adoption. You can try to work through, interstate or, getting connected as a foster parent first. And it's all very nuanced. And so what makes our agency unique is we don't do any licensing or home study, so that people can feel safe asking us all kinds of questions. And so our real intent in that beginning stage is to answer questions and help prepare people to be good advocates for themselves. So you go out to an agency and somebody says something that doesn't feel off or feels right, then come back and we'll talk about it. There's many other alternatives, or, what should I look for in an attorney? What should it, what's right, what's not? And so that is, and a lot of times people wait for a long time. And so what are some of the things that they can do while they wait? They can take some additional training. They can talk to other families who've already had the adoption experience. Those sorts of things, and so that leads me to, you asked about one of the things we take the most pride in is just our day-to-day answering calls and making appointments and time to listen to people with their questions and their concerns, whether it's pre or post adoption. When a team member is assigned to that work, we like to say, your responsibility in that is to be fully present, to listen with compassion and understanding and really try to hear what somebody is asking. And we get a lot of positive response to that, is simply, I believe, because we're in a world where listening and somebody giving
we listen to react instead of listen to understand, right?
Yeah. Right. And also that we get back to people, that you're not dealing with a 1-800 number and you're in a line of things. A lot of times the social workers involved in home studies and so many other things have so many other things going on. And so it can be helpful. A lot of things are, giving people maybe some solutions or steps. And other times it's just simply normalizing, yep, that's really hard. That is extremely difficult. You're not crazy.
Yeah. I was just about to say that. Yeah. Don't feel crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and then we also work to build a lot of easy to understand, like written resource tools. We have a large lending library where we send things out to people and we provide return postage so they can read a book about this or do some other things. But we write a lot of web content, a lot of content that we like to say we make it family friendly or conversational, so that we can break down complex topics into something that's easy to understand and then give you resources if you want to know more. And then we do a great deal of training. We have a training path called Champion Classrooms. It's a learning management system of which you can take a course on a variety of topics. Sometimes it's live webinars, sometimes it's watching something recorded, courses, hybrid courses. Again, a lot of things to support the parenting journey, because parenting is hard for all of us. It is a very complex journey, and when you add in nuances of children from someone else's family, when you add in nuances of trauma, prenatal exposure to stress and substance use and mental health, you've got some kiddos with lots and lots of issues and people who have questions about, is this what is typical or, not? And then I would say, lastly, we work really hard to find people peer connections. So sometimes people just want to talk to somebody, like I said, I have a lot of staff members who already fit that bill, but they want to talk to somebody who's gone through this.
Been through it. Yeah.
Yep.
Empathy.
And because we've had, 40 years and lots of people we've worked with over the years, we're able to help make connections. I also often, do a little bit of legislative work in terms of a lot, again, about awareness, trying to be that neutral resource, trying to be a spot that our state legislature trusts and, finding that middle ground of, well, you could, promote this policy or that, but here are some of the unintended consequences you might not think of. Or could you please support this more because it has an impact on our families and kids?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a myth, some of the myths. What myths do we have to bust? What are some of the myths out there that you try to course correct on?
I think one is, there is a lot about younger children being easier. That is not always true. Especially when we're talking about children experience loss and trauma, young voices can't always, they're going to act out their big feelings and not necessarily be able to tell you about them.
They don't have that mature language and navigating communication yet. So
that all teens are really hard and difficult, and that's not necessarily the case at all. It's not fair to say that. That is a big myth. A lot of times we'll talk about, hey, you don't have to worry about childcare or diapers or, adolescents bring interesting challenges, but they're also kids inside that need support and help. I think that big myth about, as we began the program, that, somehow the family of origin is bad, or that these are bad people who kids don't want to have connection. And the reality is that many times we're talking about situations where we have families in this country that have generational and historical trauma that have happened, and mental health and addiction that has been cycled through many generations. And, people don't wake up in the morning wanting to harm their children. There are some difficult things that happen. I think
bad decisions, not necessarily bad people. I mean, you never know until you're walking in somebody else's shoes. You really don't know how you would respond or react. And people make some bad decisions, but they don't necessarily mean that they're bad people. And,
and that they don't love their kids. And that's a complexity, or that somebody's going to forget about these folks. I mentioned before around the transracial, intercultural issues where, if I just bring somebody into a neighborhood where we're safe and there's all sorts of opportunities that everything's going to be okay. I will often say to people, I remember I have young adult daughters now. I remember when my children were little, and if you ever went and you stay at somebody else's home, and sometimes that uncomfortableness, because every home, every family has its own culture, we need to remember that I came from somewhere else, and I'm going to have to sort of, go through that process of connecting and finding out the balance. I think also, a myth that if somebody is grieving, it means that they're unhappy in their current situation. They're just working through some very complex feelings about their identity.
Yeah. And my heart goes out to the parents that give up their children. I mean, that to me doesn't scream bad. That screams probably the most selfless act that you can do. I mean, if you're not in the right place at that time to give the right care, you made a hard decision, but perhaps a good decision, right? So, I mean, that it's just so hard to navigate. I appreciate you bringing so much light to the situation and peeling back the layers of the onion. We're going to, in the show notes, put in resources that we'll, get from your website and how listeners can find out more about adoption. We'll do all that good stuff so that there's resources there that are just, at the click of a mouse. But I do want to talk a little bit about what does the coalition need? I mean, of course, you're a nonprofit. Monetary donations are always wonderful. We're going to make that available as well in the show notes. But what else do you need? You're celebrating a 40th anniversary. How can your donors and supporters and volunteers get involved, help make a difference, and support you?
So what I often say to people is that, we are an organization that has been very fortunate to, have a combination of funding, including some, government backing from the state of Wisconsin. However, that funding isn't nearly going to, do it, as so many people in their nonprofit space understand. We are here today because also our donors and supporters were passionate. They believed in the purpose of what we were doing, and they persevered with us. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have continued to innovate. So we have to, as I've explained to you, peeling back these layers to continue to invest in innovative technologies and ways to meet folks. As I talked about training in 2018, and made an incredible investment into this online training portal that has been a game changer and really became an incredible game changer in the winter of 2020.
Oh boy.
None of us could have expected, and so donations so that we can stay on the top of, training and information, meaning our team also needs to stay trained, different ways that we can help bring connection and voice for our youth, for families, ways to help support families. So at the coalition, it's every child needs a champion, every champion needs support. And supporting those champions and making sure people have what they need is complex. People need sometimes things we can't provide. We look to partner with other agencies to do, but an investment in us has not been something that just is taken, for granted, keeping the windows closed and the roof on us. It really has been an investment in new programming, in having the staff available and having quality team members who can be there, be that compassionate voice for the families who need us most. And so we wouldn't be here without that.
Well, it sounds like you welcome everyone and anyone and all voices, young and old, and you're going to make good use of your supporters and your donors, whatever they have to offer. So we're going to definitely drop all of that into the show notes. And this has been very enlightening and timely because it's National Adoption Month, but also because it's a delicate time of year where people are prioritizing human connections and creating memories and families. And it's just a good moment to pause and think about the different types of families and how we could maybe be a little bit more sensitive to that and just extend a little bit more of ourselves to be more inclusive to all people, because everyone deserves to have that human connection. So I applaud what you do. Thank you for so many years ago, just taking your girl boss and getting it done and bringing it to perhaps a new place that you weren't completely exposed to at one point, but now it sounds like, you're all in and just making headway. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Fearless Fundraisers, that's about all we have time for today. Thank you for listening. We do hope you enjoyed today's Raise Nation topic and daily dose of inspiration. Please tune in for a new episode release every Thursday at 12:30 p.m. That's Thursday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And in the meantime, listen to all the episodes on Raise Nation Radio. Follow the channel that you like best, because we're probably there. And this way you can get notifications about all our new guests. And to all of you out there that are doing amazing things, please come on the show and chat about it. You're building better tomorrows in our communities. Your stories are awe-inspiring, and I want to feature you on the show. I would like to thank our sponsor, One Cause, for making this episode possible. One Cause is driving the future of fundraising with easy-to-use digital fundraising solutions that help nonprofits connect with donors. All about connection. Be sure to check it out at onecause.com, and please visit the resource tab on the homepage. There is free content and a broad catalog of ebooks and all sorts of things that hopefully you'll find helpful. A huge shout out again and thanks to my guest, Oriana, Carey, from the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families for just being such an inspirational voice and shedding light on foster care and adoption and explaining all the nuances and how we can do better in making human connection. Oriana, thank you again so much, but I do have to ask you any last words of inspiration for our audience.
Well, one of our core values here at the Coalition is never give up. And so even if today what you thought you had going was, going to go one way and didn't, don't ever give up. There is always a new creative solution. We wouldn't be here for 40 years without that.
It sounds like the Coalition is really trying to get away from cookie cutter models and go into those innovative paths that will get somebody where they need to go as opposed to giving up. So great inspiration and great advice, and keep doing what you're doing. And thank you to the Coalition for helping with human connections. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm Dawn Lego. This is Raise Nation Radio. You stay fearless out there.